Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Hello. Whether you're new to the show or an old friend, I'm so glad you can join us. Mission Evolution is the place to find the latest knowledge from today's leading experts. This hour, we'll discover mystical gateways into inspiration and creativity. Many of us have observed creative people and wondered, where do their ideas come from? Some of us may be quite creative, but lose inspiration at the most inopportune times, like suffering writer's block in the face of a publishing deadline. If we don't feel we're creative, is there a way to become so? If we've lost access to our inspiration, is there a way to regain it? Joining us all the way from Israel to explore mystical gateways to inspiration is Sherri Mandell. Sherri is an award-winning writer who has contributed to numerous magazines and journals. She's the author of several books, including award-winning The Blessings of a Broken Heart, and her latest, The Kabbalah of Writing, Mystical Practices for Inspiration and Creativity. She holds a master's degree in creative writing and studied the Kabbalah with teachers in Jerusalem. Her website, kobymandell.org. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So it's wonderful timing for this, because I think everybody suffers from inspiration or lack thereof about this time of year when we've had all our creative juices going for the holidays, and then all of a sudden it's like this doldrum. So I think it's really well timed. Let's start out with, how did you end up in Israel?
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, I've lived in Israel for over 25 years. I grew up in New York. I grew up with no Jewish education, even though I was Jewish. And I always wondered what being a Jew meant, really. And so I came to Israel on a vacation, and then I began to study, and I studied in yeshiva, and I studied Torah, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. I had no idea that the Jewish religion was so interesting. And then I ended up meeting my husband and getting married. I mean, he's American too. But we went back to the States for a while, but we came back here 25 years ago.
It's a beautiful place. I've been there, and several times, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So how did you get interested in the Kabbalah?
I think when I first started studying, somebody talked to us about the Sefirot. And the Sefirot are 10 channels of God's expression in the world. And I remember when he mapped out the Sefirot, I just thought it was so fascinating. And I think I immediately thought it was an amazing structure for thinking about anything. I mean, I didn't connect it to writing at that point, but it was just very comprehensive. And it also taught me a lot about the structure of the world. I call it God's divine design, because there's God, and some of God just stays where in his own world, where he's incomprehensible to us. But there's also emanations that God sends down to the world, and those are the Sefirot. And Sefirot, actually, in Hebrew, it means channels or emanations, but it also has the same root as story, because in Hebrew, story is sipor. And it also has the same root as sapphire. So it's like our stories are also treasures. And you can think of it almost that each of us, I just learned this recently, that almost every day can be thought of as a page in our book. And when we get up to heaven at the end of our lives, God is going to ask us, did your book match your name? Because your name is a prophecy. So the title of your book is your name, and God is going to ask you, did you fulfill the prophecy inherent in your name? Meaning, did you fulfill your potential in this world?
That's beautiful. And the storytelling part is so interesting too, because parables are part of just about every religion out there. The more indigenous ones pass down their whole history through storytelling. There wasn't a
Right.
written language, so it's. I love the way it all comes together ultimately. So,
Yeah.
what exactly is the Kabbalah? Where does it fit in all of this?
Okay. Well, the Kabbalah is the mystical tradition that's associated with the Torah, with the Bible, or the Pentateuch. And some people say that it was given to Adam in the Garden of Eden. Some people say that it was a rabbi from the 2nd century who it was revealed to. And then some people say, no, it was another rabbi in the 13th century. It's very mysterious. And I'm sure there are scholars who know the history and can sort of make judgments or evaluations exactly. But as far as I know, it's still a little unclear. But traditionally, you had to be religious, keeping the commandments to learn Kabbalah, and you were supposed to be at 40 because it's knowledge that's very esoteric and powerful.
At
So,
40, I'm sorry, at 40, do you mean age 40?
yeah. And
Okay.
the word Kabbalah is from the Hebrew lekabel. Kabbalah, it means to receive. So it's really a transmission through the generations.
Interesting. So it's kind of like a channeling in a way. It's
Well,
channeled into our
it's
reality.
learning that's passed down from
Oh, okay.
generation to generation, I
Okay.
would
Okay.
say.
There you have it again, passing down through oral tradition or through stories. Pretty
Yeah.
fascinating. So,
Yes.
what is the connection between the Kabbalah and the things you've been telling us and creativity? I think that's pretty interesting. So let's look into that a little.
Okay. So the Sefirot, those channels, they're channels of God's creativity. And I mean, I think of God like God created the world. God is the master of creativity. So whenever we plug into the Sefirot, we have the ability to connect to creativity because there are 10 Sefirot, but they combine. So every Sefirah contains every other Sefirah. And one of the Sefirot I define as creativity. I mean, I sort of adapted the Sefirot to writing and to creativity, but there's creativity. So there's creativity in every Sefirah. Like the first Sefirah that I talk about in the book is will, is Keter, because Keter is a crown and it's the closest to God and it has to do with will. But even in thinking about will, there's creativity. And then I talk about inspiration and kindness and limits. But in all of those aspects, they all contain an aspect of creativity.
That's pretty amazing. So, are we in fact co-creators when we're connected with this channel?
Yeah, I mean, in Judaism, we always talk about tikkun haolam, which is fixing the world, and that God left the world incomplete in order so that people could help fix it, and also so that people could help each other and partner with God in perfecting the world,
Well,
or
we're
at
kind
least
of failing. We're kind of
healing the
failing that
world.
one right now, aren't we? We've
Well,
got plenty to heal.
maybe globally, but there's always the possibility on a personal level, I think, of creating healing.
Isn't that where it all begins ultimately in this reality? Isn't it? Doesn't it have to come from within?
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree with that.
And is there a internal receptor to these different channels that you've been speaking about?
Well, it's the soul, I think, is the receptor of the channels, but also the body, also the intellect. I mean, I think that it penetrates every aspect of our beings, the sphera, because it's like the divine design. So, and we say that man and women were made in the image of God. So if this is the way that God sends his energy to us, then we can receive it in every way.
That makes sense. So we can receive it on physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual levels.
Right.
This is going to be a tough question, but I'm sure all of us are dying to know at this point.
Yeah.
How can we tell if that's what we're receiving, and how can we access it internally?
Oh, how do you access that energy?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you just receive it. I think we partner in receiving it, and we create it. But yeah, I don't have an easy answer to that. I think it's a process, and it's a lot of work actually, because everybody has a purpose in this world, and revealing that purpose it's something that takes time and patience, I think. And also you need a lot of, in Hebrew we say koach, you need a lot of strength sometimes to receive what God is sending you.
Do you think we're born with a purpose, and if we're just here, we're kind of in a way living that purpose by being here, by exchanging energies with the reality that we're in? Is it up to us then to discern how deeply we engage with that purpose at, higher and higher levels of functionality and of offering to the world?
Wait, can you ask me the question again?
It was a complicated one, wasn't it? Let me try this again. So it seems like if we all come up with a purpose, just being here, we're to a certain extent performing that purpose. But then is it up to us to be introspective and to develop ourselves so that we can more completely express that purpose into the world?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking of the sfirot. So one of the sfirot is netzach, which is endurance, and perseverance, and it's paired. It's always they come in balance, the sfirot. So that's always paired with hod, which is surrender, but also a kind of patience. So I think we're always poised between that balance of working to find our purpose, but then also having the patience to see what's going to be revealed and to wait and surrender to what is.
Aren't we kind of surrendering to what we already are?
For me, it's not enough to surrender to who I already am, because I feel like, well, I have to tell you my story a little bit to understand that.
We have a little time left in the segment, so go ahead. We might have to leave it as a cliffhanger.
Okay. Well, my son was murdered by terrorists 22 years ago.
I'm so sorry.
In Israel, Koby Mandell. So he was 13. And I feel like who I was then was not large enough, was not big enough to contain that loss, and that I had to be built up, and I had to receive a lot from other people and change a lot in order to almost become another person, so that I don't want to use the word cope with the loss, because it's not cope, so that we could transform the loss, because that pain is also power. But again, it wasn't, I couldn't be satisfied with who I was, because who I was broken and sort of finished. So I needed almost to revive myself.
I can certainly understand that. And again, we are just about to go into the break. On the other side, I'd really like to go into this shattering that you experienced and how that relates to the shatterings that we all need to experience to lose who we are not, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. So and there you need the resilience and the strength as well to undergo that. But
Yes.
it is that time for that wonderful commercial break, or at least a station break. Sherri and I will return very shortly, so you don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
Beautiful Mind Coffee is delicious coffee your brain will love. Made with ethically sourced 100% Arabica coffee grown in the volcanic soil of the Tolima, Colombia region, Beautiful Mind Coffee is roasted and ground in small batches to ensure each bag contains a wonderful full-bodied artisan coffee. Beautiful Mind Coffee contains herbal ingredients to aid in boosting your daily mental clarity and focus. Maca root powder, green tea extract and American ginseng have all been selected for their ability to support good brain health. Taking care of your brain's health now can help delay or prevent the onset of cognitive dysfunction, including dementia, Alzheimer's, and more general memory loss as you get older just by enjoying the delicious flavor of our roasted coffee and herbal ingredients found exclusively in Beautiful Mind Coffee. For more information on Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit us online at www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca. Beautiful Mind Coffee is now available at amazon.ca.
Hello again. This is
Hi.
Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us this hour discussing creativity is Sherri Mandell. Her website, kobymandell.org. Now, Sherri, you and I were just discussing at the end of the segment, of course, this horrific loss. I can't even imagine losing a child. I mean, I've been through quite a few things in my life, but that's kind of a deal breaker for me. So I can't do anything but totally admire someone that not only makes it through that, but then shifts it into creativity. Would you tell us more about the shattering and how we can move beyond that and become what you've done to allow it to remove the things that stand between us and accessing spirit, if you will?
Yeah. So my first book is called The Blessing of a Broken Heart. And after Koby was murdered, we're surrounded by a community here where I live, and people were with us all the time, and they took care of us that first year.
Mm-hmm.
They made us food, and they made us meals for the Sabbath, and they took care of our children, and they just gave us a lot of love. And I think because of all that love that we received, and also the love from my family and my husband and my family in America, that we were able to give. And what happened to me personally was that I needed to give because there was nothing really that was meaningful other than my family and, religion and my friends. But I felt the need to give to people, to help people who were in my situation. And during those years, it was the Intifada, the second Intifada in Israel, and Israelis were being killed every day. So I ended up going to people's houses for the Shiva when they were in the mourning period, and I would visit them. And then we ended up, my husband and I created a foundation called the Koby Mandell Foundation. And we started a camp for bereaved children because we saw that our children needed a lot of help and they didn't want to go to psychologists. And there was no place that they felt at home. They didn't even feel at home because children become silent victims in families like ours. So we started a camp also for bereaved children. And we've been running that camp now for 22 years. And in fact, my daughter, Eliana, just took over as the director of our foundation.
Oh, fantastic.
But she started as a camper at Camp Koby, and then she was a counselor and a head counselor and a director, and now she's running the whole foundation because she understands that when people are broken, you need help, you need support. You can't do it alone. And I think for shattering, you really need a team. And also in my book, I talk a lot that it's sort of a spiritual mystery, the blessing of a broken heart, because I felt like God was sending me messages all year, and they were in the form of birds and birds' nests. And then I learned with a friend, actually we were learning Kabbalah, And we read that it said that God lives in a supernal bird's nest, and he lives with pictures of children who were killed because of hate.
Mm.
So when we learned that, I understood that we were part of a bigger story. And I think that's part of surviving that shattering, is making yourself part of a bigger story and being able to reach out, but not at first. I think that part of why I survived was that I was able to receive, and I received a lot. And once I received so much, it was very natural for me to want to give. And when you want to give and when you're in that place, God does send you, like, God sends you angels, God sends you messengers. And I feel like God sent us help to survive. And I have to say, like what we say in Hebrew, bli ayin hara, without the evil eye, that, we did more than survive. Like we are a happy family.
It's, I think, pretty universal that when we are really confronted with challenges, deep heart challenges, like the one your experience or spoke of your experience here, that suddenly we can go two ways with it. We can totally shut down, not allow help in, and just close into our agony. Or it can open us up to see those gifts that come from the divine, to see the larger picture. What do you think made the difference for you, being able to receive what was all around you? Because some people can be in the midst of all of that support and you just can't reach them. What made the difference for you? And how do you recommend those that are shutting down to turn that around?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that a lot of people think that if they need help or if they need to receive, that it means that they're weak. And I never saw it as a weakness. In fact, I see breaking down when things are terrible as a strength, because you're able to admit your truth and you're able to recognize your truth. And I think other people, not everybody can respond to truth, but new people will come into your life who need that level of truth and have access to that level of truth and aren't afraid of it. But I think that's a kind of faith, because there are a lot of, I hear a lot of stories about people whose friends just desert them because they can't bear the pain.
Mhm. Yes, that's a common story, and it's a heartbreaking one. But it's kind of like a clearing on all levels, isn't it? When you go through something like this, it's a dark night of the soul, and when you come out the other side, not only are you changed, but everyone around you has shifted and changed as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost like a rebirth,
Hmm.
because
Renaissance in its
even
purest form.
excuse me, what?
I said Renaissance in its purest form.
Yeah, but I read that, like, for example, that a child contains some of the mother's cells.
Hmm.
So, like, physically, when Koby died, also part of me died,
Hmm.
like physically, and part of every mother does, or father. So I think that it's almost literal, like that there needs to be a rebirth because part of you has died.
Right. So, how do you shift this kind of shattering, whether it's, through the horrific thing that you went through, or shattering that any of us go through? How do we shift that into creativity? How do we find that beautiful gem, if you will, that ruby, within the chaos?
Well, first of all, I think everybody has access to creativity, but it comes in different forms. So a lot of people, even if you're not a writer, you can still write and write a journal, write daily pages. And the act of writing itself can be healing and can shift pain so that a person can become healthier rather than have it cause them to be sick. So there's a professor, James Pennebaker. I write about this in the Kabbalah of writing, that he had college students write for 4 days about problems they were having. And what he found was that the college students who wrote about the concrete details about what they suffered, but then who also reflected on what they had gone through, that later they had fewer visits to the health clinic and their vital signs were better, their heart rates were better, their blood pressure was better than either students who didn't write or didn't write in that fashion of having a particular and then a reflection on that specific experience. So I think everybody can be healed through the act of writing, even if you don't want to publish.
The thought it takes to putting it down and getting it on paper, doesn't that somehow shift perspective? Doesn't that somehow break us out of this loop that we can go in our heads because we have these half thoughts that lead to half thoughts that lead to half thoughts, and round we go? But if we have to put it in linear fashion, doesn't it open up different aspects of it, different avenues to unravel the loop that we've been in?
Yeah, I think it does. That if you just keep writing, you write your way out of this kind of mental confusion, I think. And it can give you clarity. I mean, even if you just make a list, you don't even have to, like there's free writing where you just write whatever comes to mind and you just keep going. And then you can go back. And even if you don't want to write, you just write, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. But there's something in the act of engaging your brain like that gives you access to some clarity.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it is a mindset and something about shifting neurological pathways while still working with the material. So you have to shift neurological pathways to go from just thinking to putting it, to run it through language and to put it into a visual linear form.
Right.
That's
I just
pretty
thought of
fascinating.
something actually, because after Koby was killed, somebody came to our house and she told me, she was a psychologist, and she said, why don't you try to have a conversation with Koby? Write with your non-dominant hand and see if he has anything to say to you. And I did that. And he wrote to me and he said, because I was saying, what should we do? What should we do? And he said, what do I do? What do I do? He said, do something to make kids feel good about themselves.
Oh, yeah. It's just such a gift they bring no matter how long they're here, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked about the Sephara, and you said there's how many different aspects to it?
There are 10 sphirot.
Okay, Sphirot. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, sphira is the singular.
Oh, okay.
Sphira.
Okay, but I was
Yeah.
speaking plural, so thank you.
Sphirot are the plural. Yeah, it's in Hebrew, so it's good that you.
I can't wrap my palate around that,
It
right?
makes sense that you wouldn't know the exact word.
So when you had access to those, were you working with those during your process of grieving?
No. I would say that one of the sphirot is kindness. So I wasn't consciously working with the sphirot at that point, but I think that what I received, what my family received, was so much kindness that it was shocking to me how much kindness there was in the world. And I think, like, lots of times, going through a tragedy, it's hard for people to see God because it's almost like God is missing. So people become God's representatives in the world, and they're able to give what some people feel is like God is absent. So I think that I'm thinking in Hebrew a little bit, that extent of kindness. It's sort of,
It's a counterbalancer, isn't it?
well, I think it opens something. It opens worlds. Yeah, and it does count. I mean, nothing will ever take away the pain and the loss, but there is something that it reinforces that the world is good, despite what you see. The world is good and God is good.
Isn't the pain and the loss actually a gateway to being able to receive the kindness on a deeper level?
Yeah, unfortunately it is but there are people who I think can give a lot of kindness
Mm.
without going through suffering.
Yes, I
You know,
would agree with you.
who are built like that and who have who need to give in order to feel alive.
Exactly. It's time for us to take another short break. Sherry and I will be right back to continue this fascinating discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Hi there. This is
Hi.
Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. Our guest this hour is Sherri Mandell. Her website, kobymandell.org. Sherri, we were talking about kindness, and that seems to be really a kingpin here, doesn't it? The ability to give and to receive kindness. What is it about kindness that is so transformative?
Well, you know what? I'll talk about it in terms of writing, because that's one of the sefirot that I bring in the Kabbalah of writing. And in order to write, you have to allow yourself to let go. And you have to give yourself permission to express your deepest self, your inner self, your real beliefs, your real thoughts. And a lot of people are embarrassed or ashamed of their deepest thoughts. And so in a way, when you allow yourself to express everything that you're thinking or feeling and give yourself that permission, then you're doing a kindness to yourself. You're giving kindness to yourself. And it's a form of compassion for yourself. I'm not saying that you should take everything you write in first draft like that, and post it for the world, although, some people do. But I think it gives us the ability to express and then transform. And that language gives us the ability, or let's say writing gives us the ability to understand, or I'll talk for myself. It's sort of how I know what I know is through writing. It's not till I write it that I know it. And it's almost like a deeper self. Like there's levels of self, there's layers of self. And it's a way of excavating to a deeper level of self.
And in that deeper level of self, aren't you closer then to the channeling of the Creator?
I think it depends, because there has to be some kind of disclosure, I think. With this is another topic, but with grief, people always think that there should be closure. And, I wrote about this like 22 years ago, like, no, there shouldn't be closure. But there can be disclosure.
Mhm.
And disclosure means that something is revealed, after that breaking. So for me, there were a lot of things that were disclosed, but it was really almost a disclosure of power, that I lost my embarrassment, let's say, like, I had to speak in my Hebrew was terrible at that point, but I didn't let it stop me, because I had a bigger goal, that I wanted my son to be remembered, and I wanted to help other people. So that, sometimes we can connect to God by going deeper, but sometimes we also just connect to ourselves in a deeper way. But eventually the goal is some kind of disclosure, that there's some kind of revelation, because when we write, we want to find something that we didn't know eventually, like something that's original, unique, something that's there needs to be a surprise.
Absolutely, for us and for our readers. You said something that just really got me going down a rabbit hole, so I'm going to take you with me.
Okay.
You were talking about how when you're trying to write, you have to go. You'll run into places in yourself. You need to go deep within yourself, and you're going to places in yourself all of a sudden where you'll get bounced back out by shame, by of your thoughts, of your being. I mean, is it shame that bounces us out? I mean, that was what I kind of heard you say.
Oh, that it can bounce
Hmm.
people, that it can stop people, I
Right.
think,
Hmm.
from letting their voices be heard, really, from voicing their truth. Yeah. But shame is a very good topic to write about. And often when you reach that point of shame, that's where you need to keep going.
Yeah. Don't
Because
don't let it
again,
bounce you out.
right, don't let it push you away, because everybody feels shame, everybody feels embarrassment. And sometimes by writing about it, or even writing to that shame or embarrassment, and telling it that you're not going to let it bully you
Mhm.
out of having a full life, then it gives you the possibility of I don't know, healing, but of extricating yourself from it.
And I think that so many people, correct me if I'm wrong, but so many people, they get blocked in writing and they just think they can't write. And it doesn't ever occur to them that they have to transcend that place where they're ashamed of what might come out before they can get into where they need to get their writing from.
Right. They need to keep going, and that's the chesed. That's the chesed is kindness in Hebrew. That's the kindness and the self-forgiveness to just keep going. And the first draft, like, it's not the place to judge. That's another one of the sfirot, is limitation or judgment. That's gevura. That's the next draft, or the third draft, where you go back and you say, what do I have here? And you evaluate and you analyze. But the first writing has to be free. That's why it's called free writing. But that freedom also extends to a person's expression and personality, and it can change their lives.
I know it's interesting because I've seen people that are very, very educated. So they're a wonderful editor, great with language, or musician that's wonderful with their music. But when they try to create something of their own, they try to apply that perfectionism before they've accessed the creativity, and it just kills it. Just kills it dead. And I think that we do that in a lot of arenas of our life, don't we?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we all have something that I think we're perfectionist about, but being a perfectionist can really stop you before you've even gotten to the point of expression. So, yeah, it's like a stop sign where you need a green light.
And also sometimes doesn't can't education get in the way if you try to stick with what you've been taught versus just get real spontaneous?
Yeah, I mean, like if you're still listening to your English teacher, well, you know what I find, because of course, I teach writing, that a lot of people get a lot of discouragement in school. I have one student she always says to me, "I'm a terrible writer. My teachers always told me I was a terrible writer." And then in our class, she writes, and she's so funny and she's so expressive, and she's able to transcend that label. But I think a lot of us just allow other people's labels to restrict us.
So let's go into that, how it manifests other places outside of just writing. Our creativity in our lives, isn't that also greatly impacted by messaging from others as we grow up?
Yeah, I mean, our parents and our families, a lot of the messages we get as children can determine, how much courage we're going to have. Because I think creativity is also connected to courage. That
I'll go into that.
that you need courage to create, because you're going somewhere where you haven't been before, and where probably a lot of, hopefully other people haven't been before. I mean, you're always having a conversation, let's say, with the other writers or other thinkers, but you're searching for something unique. And in order to do that, I think you need confidence and also permission. I feel like maybe because of my age, that when I was growing up, like girls, I mean, it didn't really matter so much what we were. We could be anything. I mean, like I wasn't encouraged to be a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that. So I feel like in a way, even though I would have liked that encouragement, I also had freedom. And that freedom caused me to want to write, because I always felt more connected to myself and to like a wiser woman within me when I wrote.
Do you think that it's exposing in a way to you connect with that deeper part of yourself, but then bringing it out into the world and publishing it or making it available for others to read? Doesn't that take a fair amount of courage?
Yeah, it does. I think it's very hard. Like the Kabbalah of writing, by the way, it came out today. It was
No,
released today.
congratulations.
Yeah,
There's no
thank you.
mistake that we're having this talk today.
Yeah. So it was just released. And I got it a few days ago. A box of books were delivered to my house here. And at first I couldn't open the box. I mean, I just didn't want to. I felt like I was afraid to see it because of that, because it is exposing yourself. And also, what I've done in the past, it's always bound to disappoint me a little bit, even though I take pleasure in it. When I look at the book, I also see, oh, you didn't mention that. And, oh, you forgot this. And this sentence isn't like, I'm a Virgo, so I'm very critical, but,
You need some of that kindness, right?
yeah. But
Mhm.
so that voice of compassion, and also like for me, I'm already moving on to my next book and putting my energies there. So that, like the book, it's like the birth of a book, but it's not like a baby.
You don't have to keep bringing it up. It's out there.
Right.
So isn't that also one of the main stoppers of creativity is our attachment to it, our identifying with the outcome?
Yes. Right. Yes. I think that like the idea of success and can sort of paralyze people, because unless they receive accolades right away, then it's going to be hard for them to continue. And like I'm in a writing group. Actually, I'm writing children's books now, children's picture books. And we share our rejections. And so much of the writing profession unless you're, a famous writer and, have your books made into movies or go on, book tours all over the world. But you receive a lot of rejection.
Mhm.
And part of the game or the process is just being able to say, okay, next thing.
But being able to share that with people that you trust that are also in the same boat, I'll bet that's really helpful.
Yeah, it's fun. And also we evaluate our rejection letters. We'll say, oh, that was a great rejection. So
Left no doubt in my mind that I was rejected.
no. But it's also, especially with writing now, it's all publishers, it's all about marketing and the marketplace. So, it's commercial. So
Right.
not all writing is based on being commercial.
Well, that I think is the difficult thing with all creativity is it's stifled oft times by what the marketing perceives is going to sell versus what's going to be received in the world or is needed in the world or is unique in the world. That doesn't seem to matter. It just goes right back to the dollar. And isn't that a major problem in our society, period?
Right. But
Yeah.
I was just thinking about like writing, and in the Kabbalah of writing, one thing I say is that writing also causes you to pay attention, because if you want to describe something, you have to look at it very deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think also as a writer, I'm always looking for a story. So, even everyone I meet, I'm always thinking about what's their story and how can I.
Well, we're going to have to looking into stories on the other side of yet another break. Please
Okay.
stay with us as Sherri and I continue to explore the mystical aspects of creativity. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
Beautiful Mind Coffee is delicious coffee your brain will love. Made with ethically sourced 100% Arabica coffee grown in the volcanic soil of the Tolima, Colombia region, Beautiful Mind Coffee is roasted and ground in small batches to ensure each bag contains a wonderful full-bodied artisan coffee. Beautiful Mind Coffee contains herbal ingredients to aid in boosting your daily mental clarity and focus. Maca root powder, green tea extract and American ginseng have all been selected for their ability to support good brain health. Taking care of your brain's health now can help delay or prevent the onset of cognitive dysfunction, including dementia, Alzheimer's, and more general memory loss as you get older, just by enjoying the delicious flavor of our roasted coffee and herbal ingredients found exclusively in Beautiful Mind Coffee. For more information on Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit us online at www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca. Beautiful Mind Coffee is now available at amazon.ca.
Welcome back. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. This hour, our expert guest is Sherri Mandell. Her website, kobymandell.org. Sherri, we've spent the last 3 quarters talking, here and there about the major blocks to creativity. Let's recap those a little bit. Can you do that for us?
Oh, the blocks.
So we talked about shame as one, as examples like that.
Right. Shame, lack of confidence, a lack of courage, and I think just an inability to let go, and maybe a lack of trust in the process.
Does lack of trust in the process, and this leads me to my next question, how much do you think accessing and living our creativity has to do with having something we have faith in? Yours is Judaism, but everybody has their own avenue, their own road. Do we really need to decide what it is that we can have faith in order to have the courage to be creative?
I'm not sure. I think that, you can have faith and that could make you creative. But I think if you find your expression of creativity, that can give you faith because it gives you a way to grow in your life and also to use your life. So you're living your life, you're not rushing through your life because you're using it, but not in a pejorative way. Like you're making use of it and you're finding a way to translate it into something greater.
You mentioned at the beginning that our name is the name of the book, of our story. What role does our creativity in our inspiration and our striving to access and express those, what role does that have into deepening the story, deepening the book?
Oh, our life story. I think that, like when you write a book and you send it to your agent and they try to find a publisher, the publisher wants to know what is unique about this, what makes it different from everybody else. And I think that finding your creative avenue is what differentiates you, but it's also the gift you're given in the world. And everybody has a gift. There's nobody without a gift. And that gift, when you develop it, becomes your creativity, and it can be cooking, it could be baking, it can be building, it can be acting, it can be drawing. I think it can also be playing with children, right? Playing with children can be incredibly creative. So, or teaching. I think it's everything in this world. If you infuse it with creativity, then it becomes like exponential in terms of its power to change you and change the world.
If you're one of those people that wakes up with no inspiration in the morning and, fights with depression, et cetera, what would you recommend as the first step to start moving out of that and into inspired creativity?
Well, for me, I have to go for a walk. Well,
Mm,
yeah, I
mhm,
mean, in Judaism, the first thing we say in the morning it's called Modeh Ani, and we thank God for returning our soul to us. So
mhm.
that's the first thing we say when we wake up. And then in the morning prayers, we thank God for giving us eyes to see and legs to walk with and for giving us clothing. So we start out with appreciation. But I think if to wake up and think of things you appreciate, but also to just go for a walk, get moving. And as you walk, to look around and see what there is to appreciate and what there is that distinguishes the world around you, and to find like the little gifts and the simple pleasures.
That's such an important point. And you brought a certain amount of it up before when you said that you need to be observant to find the story in the next thing.
Mhm.
And people that are really turned inward and caught in that loop of depression and lack of creativity and spontaneity um, tend to not notice their environment at all. I mean, I'm going, where is that person's situational awareness? They're just so caught up. Something really amazing can go by, a flock of ravens even, and they won't see them. How can
Right.
we break out of that? I mean, being present with life is something that most of us have forgotten.
Well, that's true. And it's gotten worse with cell phones. I mean,
Mhm.
I have friends who are depressed and, they need medication. It's not that going for a walk is going to help them. But for most people who don't suffer from depression, but just feel a little down, I think that maybe slowing down on the walk, or just saying, I'm going to go outside and see, what God has to show me today, and hopefully it's something good. Because there's a lot of also stuff you see that's not so good. Or if things repeat themselves, then there's some kind of pattern. Or
So you're talking about looking for synchronicity as omenology. So here's a message in the
right,
synchronicity that you find on your walk, say, for instance.
right.
Okay. Hmm.
But in terms of, if somebody's down and they can't find their spark, they can't find their inspiration, then sometimes just to accept that also, because sometimes you're just not going to feel that you're in any kind of flow. And that's okay.
Can going deeper into it, again, like you say, through spontaneous writing, going deeper into that feeling of can't find my flow, of I am not inspired, I am depressed, can you actually access the core of it by using those skills that you were talking about?
Yeah, I think you can, especially with language, because if you start rhyming or start finding words that start with the same letter, you find some rhythm in the language, then that rhythm can also change your brain chemistry, I think, and
Yeah,
give you
it's
some
been
kind
used
of
for
pleasure.
it's been used forever, rhythm to alter brain waves, actually.
Right.
So we can go into a dream state, and what do we do in dream states? But we access creativity, right?
Correct.
Pretty fascinating. Do you work with your dreams at all?
I don't. I hardly remember my dreams. I'm embarrassed to admit that, because I would like to work with them. And I have friends who do a lot of dream work, but I haven't done that.
I guess it can be a pretty nice avenue as well. Yeah. So we're about at the point of the show when I have to ask you, Sherri, what's
Mhm.
your mission?
Oh, my mission.
Hmm.
My mission has, right now, what my mission is,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think my mission is to find play in my relationships and in my work, so that I find pleasure in what I'm doing, but that it's also finding, like, godliness in my day, but through little gifts, not through, you know dramatic presentations, but through just little hints and little gifts, and to be more alive.
Hmm. Beautiful. Beautiful. Tell us a little bit about Camp Koby.
Okay,
That's pretty
so
fascinating.
yeah, it's Camp Koby and Yosef. Koby was killed with Yosef Ishran. So, for example, we just had a winter camp, and we took 300 kids to Eilat, which is like a warmer city in Israel for the winter. And I'll tell you something that happened on the Sabbath. I was at synagogue and I was coming out, and two girls came up to me. Of course, they were speaking in Hebrew, and they said, "You're Sherri Mandell, right?" And I said, "Yes." They said, "We just have to thank you. We went to Camp Koby. We go to Camp Koby, and we're here visiting our friend who also had a death in her family.
Mm.
And these girls, they became best friends. They said they are our closest friends." And then I said to them, "Well, what happened? Who died in your family?" Which is something that most people can't say to them so directly. And one said her father had died, and then one said her brother had committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to share those stories and carry them for kids is very difficult. But when they can share them, then they can transform them.
Mm.
And it becomes something that's bearable. Like it makes the unbearable bearable.
Doesn't also coming together with people of your age group that have had similar loss, because you can be very isolated by your loss in general public, because like you said, people are afraid, they don't know how to talk to you, they don't know how to look at your pain, they're afraid to ask, and all of a sudden you just feel ostracized. Does that camaraderie come from the shared experience, and is there a healing in that?
Oh, yeah, definitely for kids, because other kids really don't know how to respond to them. And often their teachers don't know how to respond to them.
Mhm.
And often the parents are sort of missing in action because sometimes one died and then the other can't cope. So at Camp Koby, first of all, they come together and they can speak. They can say what happened to them and what it's like for them. And then lots of times they start making jokes about it also. So that it's something that's almost taboo. Like in society, you can basically talk about everything nowadays, but to talk about death, especially for kids, it's a lot of kids won't even, if they go to a new school, they won't even tell their friends or the teacher what happened to them.
Mm-hmm. So they carry all this alone.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And it almost becomes a secret and a shame. It becomes something shameful. And at camp, when it's revealed, then it's shared and it becomes something that you can live with. And once you can live with it, then the story can change. I think that's the key about writing also, is that we're always looking to allow the story to change. And one thing I didn't mention, but it's the role of the imagination, that when you write about what is possible, like suppose that, or it could be, then you're able to write, it's called like a literary reality or surplus reality. You're writing about what didn't happen, but could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And once you are able to voice that, then then you change, even though the situation hasn't, in the past hasn't changed, you change.
And then therefore, doesn't that create a matrix for a new situation in the future?
Right. You're a new person. You've given yourself the ability to have more creative possibility.
And that isn't that why we're here? I mean, there's the key right there, is to be able to imagine a different way and therefore create it. Otherwise,
Right.
we're still back in that loop where we don't see any
Right.
other options.
Right.
Yeah, not
But the writing,
situationally aware at all.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, another word for that imagination, I think, is hope.
Okay. Yeah, we have to have hope to imagine something different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And imagination gives us the hope that things could be different and that things can get better.
Well, we're just about out of time. Would you tell me, how do you see creativity and inspiration changing our world moving forward?
How does creativity and inspiration change the world? I think that it gives people the ability to have unique solutions for some of the problems in the world, because there needs to be creative thinking and also positive thinking, not to like what you were talking about, to get caught up in a maelstrom of negativity and not be able to exit it. But once
Well,
you have,
unfortunately, we are out of time. I can't
okay,
thank you enough, Sherri, for coming on the show and sharing your experience.
thank you.
Our guest this hour has been award-winning author Sherri Mandell. Her latest book, The Kabbalah of Writing, Mystical Practices for Inspiration and Creativity. Her website, KobyMandell.org. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to visit past archived episodes, visit our website, www.missionevolution.org. Please be sure to join us right here next time as this mission continues, bringing inspiration, resources, and support to an evolving world.